accidental. One of the first big examples came in 1996 when tragedy struck Tupac's circle yet again just shortly after his death. Yaki Gaddafi, the 19-year-old Outlaws member who had been in the car behind Pac during the Las Vegas shooting, died in a cramped, badly lit stairwell in East Orange, New Jersey. According to police, Gaddafi was accidentally shot by his friend Roddy Beal, who was handling a .22 caliber in the dark when it went off and struck Gaddafi in the temple.
He was a rapper who toured with Tupac Shakur. 19-year-old Yafeu Fula was shot in the head early Sunday morning on the third floor of the housing project where he was visiting his girlfriend.
His mother never believed the accidental discharge narrative, pointing to contradictions in statements and the eerie timing just weeks after Pac's murder. Beal ultimately took a plea deal for aggravated manslaughter, but the truth of what happened in that stairwell has never felt settled. In 2002, another life was cut short, this time far from the US. Lisa Left Eye Lopez was in Honduras filming a documentary and trying to find spiritual clarity. 2 weeks before her death, she'd been in a van that accidentally hit and killed a young boy. She'd held the child in her arms, paid for his medical care and funeral, and told friends she felt a spirit meant for her had taken him instead. On April 25th, while she was driving a rented SUV, she swerved to avoid an oncoming truck, overcorrected to dodge another car, and the vehicle flipped multiple times before slamming into trees. Left Eye, who wasn't wearing a seatbelt, was thrown from the SUV and killed instantly. Her friends survived.
Lopez, who was not licensed, was driving a Mitsubishi SUV carrying 7 other passengers. Reports say she lost control of the vehicle while going too fast. Lopez suffered head trauma and died instantly.
A handheld camera captured the moments leading up to and right after the crash. One of the rare haunting pieces of footage showing a fatal accident happen in real time. A few years later, in 2006, the West Coast lost Bloody Mary, a fierce, overlooked pioneer who stood out on death row's roster and helped give Piru Love its legendary status. She was riding her motorcycle on a Compton highway heading to a Harley-Davidson event when a car fleeing police barreled into her at high speed. The impact crushed her lungs and hips and caused severe brain trauma. She was placed on life support but didn't survive. A rising female voice in a space dominated by men, taken out by a chase she had nothing to do with. The 2010s brought another wave. In Atlanta, Shoddy Low, Bankhead legend Dey Alum, and the unmistakable voice behind Dey Know, lost control of his Audi on I-285 in 2016 after leaving the blue flame. The car broke through a guardrail, hit 2 trees, and flipped. He was ejected and killed on impact, while 2 female passengers walked away.
Lost control of the vehicle, struck a tree, and that caused the vehicle to overturn and catch on fire. Now Lowe was ejected from the vehicle and died here on the scene.
As paramedics handled the scene, the women asked police if they could take the cash in his pockets, an uncomfortable footnote to an already grim moment. Even in recent years, the pattern hasn't slowed. In 2015, MC Supreme, known for the early 90s anti-violence track Black in America, was sitting in his parked car on Pacific Coast Highway when a suspected drunk driver slammed into it, flipping the vehicle down an embankment and killing him on the spot. Then across the ocean in 2019, UK rapper Cadet was finally having his breakthrough after years of grind. He did everything right that night, didn't drive, booked a taxi, stayed responsible. But on the way to a university show, a van driven by a drunk, speeding 23-year-old crossed into the wrong lane and slammed into his taxi head-on. Cadet died instantly. He had just been texting his cousin Crept about all the festivals lined up for summer. And in 2025, Angie Stone, a pioneer whose work with the Sequence laid foundations for women in hip-hop, was returning from a show with her band when their Sprinter van overturned on Interstate 65. As some passengers scrambled out with the help of Good Samaritans, a tractor-trailer barreled into the overturned van. Stone, pinned underneath, was the only fatality out of 10 people. Revenge deaths. It started as early as 1987 when Scott LaRock, the calm, level-headed co-founder of Boogie Down Productions, became the culture's first major loss. Scott wasn't the type to go looking for drama. He was the mediator, the mentor, the one who brought KRS-One off the streets and into the studio. But a simple personal dispute with a neighborhood rival set off a chain reaction he couldn't outrun. One night in August, he and DJ D-Nice went to the South Bronx to try to defuse a dangerous situation. D-Nice had been threatened by some guys in the Highbridge projects, and Scott, being the older, more level-headed one, went along to help mediate. But things didn't go the way he planned. While Scott sat in a Jeep outside, shots rang out from a nearby rooftop.
And what happened was Scott was trying to be a peacemaker between
between D-Nice and this guy, and things just got out of hand.
A bullet tore into the back of his head and neck, slamming him forward into the dashboard. He didn't die on the spot. He was rushed to Lincoln Hospital, where he eventually passed away. Almost a decade later, the cycle spun even faster and louder, this time with the biggest star in the world at its center. Tupac Shakur had spent most of 1996 in the eye of a storm. Death row, gang politics, the East Coast-West Coast war, all mixing into something volatile. On the night of the Mike Tyson fight in Las Vegas, he and Suge Knight spotted Orlando Anderson, a Southside Compton Crip in the MGM Grand Lobby. Pac didn't hesitate, he ran up and swung first, and the beating that followed was pure humiliation for Anderson. In the streets, humiliation is a debt. Hours later, at a red light on Flamingo and Koval, a white Cadillac pulled up beside Pac and Suge. Gunfire erupted. Pac was hit 4 times. Suge sped toward the hospital, but the damage was done. 6 days later, Pac was gone, and the streets, already divided, were now boiling. 6 months later, hip-hop took another hit, this time in Los Angeles outside a glitzy after-party that should have been a celebration. Biggie Smalls had flown out for the Soul Train Awards, trying to show he wasn't the monster the media painted him to be after Pac's death. But behind the scenes, the whispers were loud. Suge Knight wanted revenge, and if he couldn't get Diddy, he'd get whoever was close. As Biggie Suburban sat at a red light near Wilshire and Fairfax, a dark sedan rolled up and opened fire. Biggie was hit 4 times and pronounced dead less than an hour later.
On November 26, 2003, James Tapp, also known as Soulja Slim, was shot and killed right here in New Orleans.
By the 2000s, revenge killings in hip-hop had gone from rare tragedies to repeating patterns, especially in the South. Soulja Slim, New Orleans legend and no-limit soldier, was at the top of his game when old street issues caught up to him. The details of his beef were murky, but the end was crystal clear. On Thanksgiving weekend, Slim stepped into his mother's front lawn in Gentilly. A gunman walked up and shot him 3 times in the face and once in the chest. The investigation quickly became controversial. Authorities arrested Guardrail Smith, who possessed a stolen police pistol consistent with a murder weapon. Reports indicated Smith may have been paid $10,000 for the hit. However, the investigation ultimately collapsed. New Orleans' no-snitching culture meant witnesses refused to testify, leaving the case unresolved. In 2011, his own life ended the same way, gunned down in the streets he once terrorized. 2 decades later, Memphis lost young Dolph in almost the same way, except this time, the feud was public, long-running, and laced with pride. Dolph had turned down Yo Gotti's offers to join CMG, choosing independence over allegiance. That decision became disrespect in the eyes of the wrong people. For years, Dolph survived attempts on his life, but on November 17, 2021, while stopping at Makita's Cookies to support a local black-owned business, 2 gunmen ambushed him and fired more than 20 shots. And in Chicago, the pattern looked different but felt the same. FBG Duck, deep in the middle of O Block vs. Tookaville War, released Dead B, one of the most disrespectful diss tracks the city had ever heard. He name-checked dead rivals, mocked them, taunted the people grieving them. A few weeks later, Duck was shopping in the Gold Coast, far from the South Side trenches. But the shooters followed, pulled up in 2 cars and sprayed more than 30 rounds in broad daylight. Even someone trying to put positivity back into his neighborhood wasn't spared. Nipsey Hussle, investing millions into South Central, ran into Eric Holder outside his Marathon store. Nipsey told him, "They're saying there's paperwork on you." A warning, maybe even concern. But Holder heard disrespect, accusation, a stain on his name. An hour later, he came back with a gun, shot Nipsey multiple times, and kicked him in the head before running off. A personal explosion of ego and anger that took the life of someone trying to uplift the same block they came from. Betrayal. Jam Master Jay was one of the earliest and clearest examples. He wasn't just Run DMC's DJ, he was a community figure, a mentor, someone who'd built Mizell Studios specifically to keep his people close and give young artists a path out of the streets.
They say encourages good behavior.
They offer dope and lots of coke, but we just leave it alone.
You know what I'm saying? That's the type of lyrics we have, you know what I mean? Our lyrics are so positive, you could never blame it on us.
And yet behind the scenes, prosecutors say Jay got involved in coke as the group's fame slowed. In 2002, he allegedly secured 10 kilograms of for a Maryland deal involving Ronald Washington and Carl Jordan Jr. But after a dispute, Jay cut Washington out of the deal, a move prosecutors later said sparked a fatal revenge plot. Witnesses say Jay hugged them when they walked into his studio that night. Seconds later, 2 close-range shots ended his life in the same room he created for their futures. It took 22 years for the truth to come out, and when it did, the heartbreak wasn't just about the killing, it was about who pulled the trigger. That same sense of hometown betrayal was what made Big L's death in 1999 so chilling. Lamont Coleman was Harlem's rising genius, the kid with insane wordplay and a real understanding of the streets he came from. But those streets turned on him. On the night of February 15, 1999, just before 9 p.m., all of Harlem heard the crack of gunfire and then the eerie silence. Big L was found outside his own apartment building on West 139th Street, shot 9 times in the face and chest. Police didn't hesitate to call it what it was, an execution. That someone was allegedly Gerard G. Love Woodley, Big L's own childhood friend.
Big L probably never even seen it coming, that he would even think that a nigga would want to go there with him, because they all was friends.
Woodley was more than an acquaintance. He was right there in the early years, even captured on the back cover of Big L's debut album, Lifestyles of the Poor and Dangerous. Fast forward a few years and the same kind of jealousy and he made it out energy hit stacked bundles. A Harlem talent with Dipset behind him, he was finally on the cusp of real stardom. But success doesn't erase old envy. Coming home to Far Rockaway at 5 a.m., he walked right into his setup. Someone who knew his schedule, someone who knew where he lived, someone comfortable enough to wait for him. 2 shots, 1 to the head, 1 to the neck, and the killer only took his chain, just the symbol of everything he'd earned. Even inside tight crews, betrayal was never far. Slim Duncan was in the studio, his own people around him, Brick Squad energy in the air, a place where he should have been most protected. An argument popped off, supposedly over something as small as candy, but it wasn't really about candy. It was ego, something deeper that no one wanted to admit. A packed studio, 13 to 20 people inside, yet nobody claimed to see who fired the fatal shot. The silence said everything. Slim wasn't killed by an outsider. He died in a room full of people who knew him but refused to speak. Lil Snoop's story twisted betrayal even further. At 18, fresh off signing with Meek Mill, he was still living half in the industry, half in the streets. On June 20th, 2013, around 4 a.m. in Winfield, Lil Snoop was hanging out at a friend's apartment when a $100 video game bet turned deadly. Snoop won with a last-second shot, angering 36-year-old Tony Holden. Tension exploded when another friend, Edric Lil E. Stewart, accused Snoop of cheating. The argument escalated fast, and Snoop was shot twice in the chest over nothing.
It all happened last week. Police believe an argument over a video game turned violent when
Holden later confessed and surrendered, charged with murder and armed robbery, while Stewart was arrested for manslaughter. But justice never came. Holden wasn't convicted, and Stewart walked away with only a minor weapons charge. Even Brotherhood wasn't immune. Baton Rouge artists G Money and NBA Youngboy once treated each other like siblings until street politics, a gang switch, and a personal violation tore everything apart. Diss tracks turned the relationship into a feud, and eventually, Youngboy's associate DeAndre Fields carried out the hit, shooting G Money outside his own studio. A brotherhood turned fatal, and the cycle continued when Fields himself was later killed. And then came the era of social media, where betrayal didn't always come from a person, it came from your own posts. Pop Smoke was in Hollywood, living the dream, but one Instagram story with a visible address was all it took. 4 young, gang-affiliated men saw the post, tracked him, and raided the house at 4 a.m. A teenage shooter, a struggle over jewelry worth only about $2,000, and Pop Smoke was gone. Even XXXTentacion, chaotic and controversial as he was, didn't expect the setup waiting for him outside a Florida motorcycle shop. 4 men knew exactly where he'd be and exactly what he was carrying after withdrawing cash. 2 gunmen confronted him, demanded his bag, and shot him when he resisted. Some say someone close to him may have tipped the killers off. Whether that part is true or not, the surveillance, the timing, the execution, all pointed to premeditated betrayal. Non-personal. It starts with Eazy-E in 1995, one of the architects of gangster rap, the man who helped turn Compton into a global conversation. He walked into Cedars-Sinai in March thinking he had asthma. Instead, on March 17th, he told the world he had AIDS, and 9 days later, he was gone. A man who survived real gang tension, business wars, and street pressure died of AIDS-induced pneumonia at just 30.
Rap singer Eazy-E has lost his battle with AIDS just 10 days after revealing that he had the disease.
Just a virus that took him faster than anyone could process. His death showed how unprepared hip-hop was to talk about sickness, especially something as stigmatized as AIDS in the 90s. Almost a decade later, another legend fell in a completely different but equally non-violent way. Old Dirty Bastard, Wu-Tang's wildcard, the unpredictable genius with a voice nobody could imitate, collapsed in a New York studio. He was days away from turning 36. Years of chaotic living finally caught up to him. The coroner said tramadol triggered a heart attack. It wasn't beef or rivals, it was the lifestyle and the substances that had been chasing him for years. And before ODB's collapse, the South had already lost one of its pioneers. DJ Screw, the mind behind everything chopped and screwed, was found dead in his Houston studio in 2000. The cause was codeine mixed with Valium and PCP, lean, the exact drug he made part of Southern culture. Screw changed the world of an entire region, but the slowed down world he created ended up slowing his body down until it stopped. He was 29. His death became a quiet warning nobody wanted to hear at the time. The same warning echoed again in December 2007 with Pimp C. Half of UGK, one of the most respected voices in Southern rap, the man who helped popularize syrup nationally with Sippin' on Some Syrup. He was found dead in a hotel room in Los Angeles.
The shocking death of well-known Port Arthur rapper Pimp C. Pimp C, who was born Chad Butler, was one half of the rap group UGK and was found dead this morning in a hotel room in Los Angeles.
The autopsy said codeine promethazine mixed with sleep apnea caused him to stop breathing in his sleep. It wasn't foul play, it was the combination of a medical condition and the very substance he'd helped immortalize in music. But not every non-personal death was tied to drugs. Heavy D, one of the most joyful and positive presences from the 90s, collapsed in the stairwell of his Beverly Hills condo in 2011. A blood clot from his legs traveled to his lungs, a silent killer triggered by a long flight back from London after performing at a Michael Jackson tribute. He was 44, successful, respected, and completely unaware he was walking around with a ticking clock in his bloodstream. A few months before Heavy D passed, Nate Dogg lost his years-long battle with the after effects of 2 massive strokes. The voice behind Regulate, Area Codes, and half the hooks of the G-Funk era spent years trying to recover. His mind bounced back, but his body never did. Complications finally took him at 41. He survived gang life, survived the transition from the 90s to the 2000s, survived fame, but not the damage done inside his own body. Then came the modern era, where addiction and counterfeit pills became their own epidemic. Chris Kelly of Crisscross, who once had the whole world jumping in backward clothes, died in 2013 after using a mix of a speedball. His friend said she took him home to sleep it off. He never woke up. Another 90s childhood hero gone not from beef or danger, but from the same silent battle he'd been fighting for years. Mac Miller's 2018 death hit a new generation the same way Eazy-E's did in '95. Shock, confusion, and grief. Mac had been open about depression and addiction, using music as therapy. When he ingested counterfeit Percocet laced with fentanyl, the combination of fentanyl, cocaine, and alcohol killed him at 26.
An up-and-coming rapper is dead at 26 years old. Mac Miller believed to have suffered an overdose at his Studio City, California home. The coroner took his body in for an autopsy.
His dealer didn't just sell him drugs, he sold him poison. 3 people were charged, but the damage was already done. And barely a year later, Juice WRLD followed. The private jet landed in Chicago, police boarded to search the luggage, and he suffered a seizure during the chaos. The theory was that he swallowed pills to hide them. Toxicology later confirmed oxycodone and codeine overdose. 21 years old, a voice of Gen Z whose lyrics already sounded like someone predicting his own ending.